This is Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur with your host, Lynn Freest. Lynn will share ideas and expert advice from people that are walking in your shoes and living their encore careers, where they want and at the pace they want. You'll start a company of one with confidence and knowledge to live a fulfilled life of freedom and ease. Lynn is a coach and leadership consultant whose mission is to show senior leaders and experts how to start something refreshing and new after a full career in the corporate environment.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of the podcast, Creating Your Encore Career and Becoming a Silver Entrepreneur. In this episode, it's number 151, and it's titled Takeaways from the conference I just attended called Your Message Matters. Now, I will soon be offering openings in my Encore Career group coaching program, and this is a program that will enable you and a peer group to launch and develop your own Encore careers. So, be thinking about it, and to get a powerful start, please contact me. So this conference is sponsored by Jonathan Milligan, and he wrote the book, Your Message Matters. And now he is hosting also a live event around that book and helping people get started in creating their business that they're interested in. So I'll go through two parts on this. One will be going to make some comments on the takeaways, the things that I caught from the conference in terms of conference content, and what I actually chose as my next steps in building my business. And then I'll also do a little comment on just the process of the conference itself and how much I enjoyed that, and what are some of the really neat design elements that Jonathan used to make this a wonderful conference. So to start with, the seminar content. Again, Jonathan has a process, a success path, you might say, that he'll take you through. And what went on in this particular conference is he really said, often there's so many things that people could do, they get overwhelmed, and they really don't take action because they feel there's too much to do. So he actually used a card deck, which showed different elements of what you could do in your business. And he had us work our way through that. But then in the card deck, we would only pick out one card on one particular subject as to what was going to be our next step in building and growing our business. Now, the first one I think is important because it was for me. I decided, again, I'd always known the value of mastermind groups or peer groups, and I've talked about that several times in the podcast. But again, it just reinforced that. And that, again, is what has led me to double down on creating these mastermind or peer group coaching programs to help people begin their Encore career. Now, another step, and it was kind of in one of the steps that Jonathan talks about, is how do you build traffic? How do you have let people know about what you're offering and what you're doing? And so he calls it the traffic pattern. And then within that, I chose, I'm going to partner. How can I be more intentional about getting featured on other podcasts? One of the things he mentioned and that I've gotten started on already is joining a program called Podmatch. And it's sort of a dating site, as it were, for people who are podcasting or want to be guests on podcast, and it really helps you connect with one another. Actually, the founder of Podmatch spoke at the conference, and I got to follow up with some few questions on him. And just in the first couple of days here of signing up, I had almost 20 people ask if they could be on my podcast, and at least one person asked if I could be on their podcast. So again, it's early on that, and then actually I had to pause activity there because I will be on vacation for a fair amount of the month of July, but it's got a lot of energy around it, and I was really pleased that I did that. Another thing, as we got into the next element, we talked about Facebook lead ads. And that's sort of a unique thing that I'm not sure I'll take on, but it was still interesting that evidently Facebook has a specific process you can go through when you're looking to connect with new people and share whatever your business, your expertise is. So that was an interesting thing. The next thing is in the activate. How do you activate things? In the Activate arena, I actually chose to do a compact course, but he has another theme that you could do that he actually highly recommends, which is writing what he calls a compact book. Now, this is a book that would be probably about half the size of a book that you'd find in a bookstore for nonfiction anyway. And he says, use this as an opportunity to focus your message, have that book, and then obviously you can use that to connect with other people. If you have a book. In a sense, it just gives you a little more authority. And also in today's world, it's much easier to self-publish a book than ever before in the past. You don't have to go through a somewhat arduous process of traditional publishing. Another thing that we talked about was there's an arena where Jonathan talks about subscribe. And this is how do you keep in contact with your either potential clients or existing clients, but how do you keep that refreshed and really keep sharing stuff with them? And so one of the thoughts he had there was what's called a mini membership site. And this would be for probably potential clients as opposed to your current clients. But he said you can set these up, again, with little cost. And also you can set them up so you're sharing stuff regularly with people, but you're not being consumed by how much content you have to create. So he had some strategies for how to do that. And I think I will do some of that too, because I'll know in terms of creating an Encore Career, there are some people that are going to want to go all in and really grab it by the horns and pretty much do it with a lot of intention. But there are other people who are just going to be thinking about it. They want to stay in touch. They want to keep getting information about it, but they're not necessarily going to tack it with that kind of intensity. So I'm thinking about using that as one of the things that I do also. Another element that Jonathan talked about, and it had to do with the book, he actually gives away a free copy of his book. And if you go to, the link is going to be in the show notes for his website. If you go there, you can actually get a free copy of the book just for paying shipping and handling. And because what he does is, he says, then they've made, even though it's a modest decision, they have made a decision to buy something from you. So that tells you something about them, and then you can consider them as warm prospects because they've already at least made a decision to make even a small investment in their careers. And Jonathan talked about in his research, what he's found was if you have 1,000 buyers, somebody who, even if it's a modest amount, but if you have 1,000 people who have bought something for you, that's the equivalent of having 16,000 followers. Again, followers are often people who are marginally interested, maybe had a particular interest and no longer have interest. But if people have actually made that decision, 1,000 of them is much more important than having just 16,000 cold followers. Now, another piece of great content was Jonathan shared interviews with people. And I'll probably go back to this again, and maybe eventually I'll interview some of them for this podcast. But he talked to people who were far along the path in building their business and have great success. We also interviewed people that are in the middle and have done some things, but are still actively working to do some others. And he talked with people who are really in the beginning, that are really just deciding what it is, what their message is going to be and how they're going to serve people. The interviews were, again, just a great takeaway from that session. Now, the last piece I'll share about the content was Jonathan has a great format for handling webinars or training. And this was true. We had both people in person, but we had as many people attend this training virtually. But for example, for a given hour, if you're going to have a training session, he would recommend you teach the topic for no more than about 20 minutes. Share information with the audience on a particular piece of the topic, but then provide an exercise for about 10 minutes. So people would work individually, taking what they've just heard and applying it to what it is they're trying to do. Then after that, he recommends going to a breakout discussion. People are in groups of 3, 4 people. They'll talk about what they've just done in their personal exercise as well as the general topic they've just heard about. And then for 10 minutes, Jonathan will bring everybody back to the same room or the same Zoom room and do a Q&A where people will have generated questions as they went through either their personal exercise or their breakouts. He'll come back and answer things and expand on what he's been teaching. And then finally, if you're having a multiple-hour virtual session or even a multiple-hour in-person session, he says, leave a good 10 minutes for a personal break. Now, people may use that for their personal needs. They may use it just to catch their breath. They may even use it to just, again, capture some more notes about what they've learned so far. So that wraps up the key takeaways with respect to content. Now, I told you that I came away with a personal set of really 5 things that I was going to do. In the first element, in the category of traffic, I have already signed up and started participating in this program, online program called Podmatch, to, one, help me find guests for this podcast and for me to be a guest on others' podcasts. Then there's an area around validating my offer. And that is that explore, say after somebody has initially signed up, maybe ask you for information, but to validate the fact that I'm teaching what people really want to hear, I will plan to offer a 4-week boot camp. And this will probably come, in my case, you've already heard me say I'll offer group coaching, but that comes later. The first thing I'll probably do later in early fall is offer a 4-week boot camp where people can kind of try out the ideas, as well as I can start getting feedback from them as to what is resonating. The next piece is to really activate customers. Again, as Jonathan said, he did it with a free book offer. I'm going to do it with what's called a compact course. So I'll offer a course that'll, again, will build on the free 4-week boot camp. It'll still be a relatively inexpensive course, but it will then just keep building on that. And then finally, we get to the monetize my work, and that's where my group coaching program comes in. So that's the place where I'll providing value, working with a group of former corporate people that want to now start their own business, and we'll work for some period of time together and really help people not only plan, but detail and then actually execute and implement what they want to do into creating their business. Then the last piece that I'd mentioned earlier was called subscribe, which is how do you keep the wheel spinning as far as interacting with new people or sharing valuable information with the people who are not ready to jump into a group coaching program, but again, still have that idea there. How do I serve those? And that's where we get back to what I mentioned, the mini membership site. What I'll plan to do, and that will be, again, that'll follow on to some of the other things here, but that's the kind of thing where I can still share what I feel is valuable information with people, but it'll be at a low cost point. Now I want to talk about what I felt were the great design elements of the event. And some of these I've mentioned earlier, but I think I want to bring it together saying, here's what makes the great design of either a virtual or an in-person conference. First is community. Now, Jonathan had already set the stage. Some of us were working with Jonathan before. I'm a coach in Jonathan's program, so there were people that knew each other. But he also hosted a virtual event a few days before the actual live and formal event where it was just get to know. So whoever had signed up, we just had about a 1-hour Zoom call, and we had some breakout rooms, again, just for the purpose of having people introduce themselves to one another. So this whole idea of a community. And then certainly in the live event, since you're all in the same facility, same area, Jonathan really encouraged us all to really connect with the other people that were at the event. I mentioned earlier the interviews. I think those are invaluable because it's one thing for even a very skilled and talented person like Jonathan to tell us, here are the things you need to do. But I think it's equally valuable for us to hear from others who have done them. They have different perspectives. They've done things in a little different way. So I think it's really good to have these interviews. And again, Jonathan made sure that he interviewed people at all points in the journey. And so that was really interesting. The design of breaks, whether it be virtual or in person, a couple things happen. It's a little harder on virtual, but in person, obviously then there's a lot of nice informal interaction. You can set up your virtual things to have the break time is actually you leave the Zoom room on so people can maybe just informally interact. Then Jonathan also had a workbook, both for the virtual and the in-person people. It was a kind of a fill-in, but it was, in a broader sense, it was just an outline. It was key topics, and then you could really put in anything you wanted, and he had room there for you to specifically take the teaching and start making notes on how you might use it in your business development. Then also the card game. I thought it was something new he was trying. I think he did a wonderful job with it, and people enjoyed it. There's something tactile about having these cards. So I have the 5 cards I've mentioned earlier in front of me here, but the whole idea of, okay, not only do I have just 5 cards, but I also know that many of the other topics Jonathan looked at, they're in cards that are in the deck, as it were. They're there. I know they're there, but I don't have to try to have them in front of me right now. So I can focus on a limited number of things Again, it helps reduce the overwhelm when you're creating your company of one. The other piece that I thought was interesting is near the end as we got towards the end, Jonathan had a period of time, a very specific and significant period of time, where he wanted us all to capture takeaways. He wanted us right there before we ever left the conference to stop, go back, reflect over it was 2 days of a conference and several sessions. So he asked us to go back and reflect. And then we also, again, had a breakout where we got to reflect with the people in a smaller group. But all that helped us to say, okay, we've got something, again, concrete. We've got the cards picking out the items. We've made some more notes of what we heard that we can take forward to us. So we just didn't all rush out the door, go home, and a lot of things start falling out of memory as you go forward, get farther away from the actual end of the event. So again, this whole idea of having a very intentional time to capture takeaways, I think was very useful. So just a final comment is I enjoyed virtual events as I always have. And in fact, this was the first time in 2 years I'd been at an in-person event. And the in-person is obviously very rich. Much richer than virtual, although virtual events, again, as I've said, I've done these the last couple of years, and it was still extremely valuable to me. So both of them can be useful. Each has, obviously, with in-person, you got expense and time of travel. Virtual is done right in your own location and home. So there is differences there. And then having the option so that people can do either one is just tremendous, because not everybody, for whatever reason, not everybody wants to or can come to an in-person event, but being able to share even basically the whole experience quite well virtually is really wonderful. So again, I've got the link in there for the Your Message Matters book site. And in that site, you can order a free copy of Your Message Matters book, just paying for shipping and handling. There are other resources there. So I encourage you to do that. And then again, thinking about my key tasks, as Jonathan would say, it's DTN. It's do this next. So mine are with respect to traffic. I joined the Podmatch organization to validate my offer that I have something that people really need and find useful. I'm going to do a free 4-week boot camp to activate my customers, to have people actually start engaging with me in a more intentional process. I'll create a compact course that'll be moderately cost, but still hopefully adding to people's value. And then to monetize my work, the core offer that I plan to have is paid masterminds or group coaching programs that I'll engage again with a group of 10 people or so to really start building that company of one for them. And then finally, to maintain connection with potential clients and subscribe for future clients, I'm going to tackle the mini membership site. So that's kind of a quick review of the Your Message Matters conference. I was really pleased with it. Hope you go to the website, look at the book, because the book itself, even as a standalone, I think is very valuable. So remember, with an Encore Career, the rewards are great. You can work when you want, where you want, and you can do the work you love. So to get a powerful start, please contact me. But thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.